Welcome to IndyScotNews Review of the Week. Welcome to Julia Pannell, who writes This Week in Scotland for isp.scot, and to Bruce Hosie of Grumpy Scottish Man blog. You've both covered a number of issues in the news in your blogs this week, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on a few of the most significant stories. So welcome, Bruce, and welcome, Julia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julia, can I start with you? The elephant in the SNP room this week, the Party of Independence, we're led to believe, is the issue of internal party abuse, as Joanna Cherry is targeted once again. Is there a witch hunt going on?
Yes, definitely. I think what's happening with Joanna Cherry shows that the SNP is not about independence anymore. At some point, it became about gender reform more than anything else. You've got the Greens on the SNP going full pelt for gender reform, but they're soft on independence. They've attacked Joanna Cherry because she supports gender critical women. You asked if anybody had spoken up for her. I had to rack my brains, and I couldn't really think of anybody significant in the party or anybody in the party at all that had supported her. The big names are against her. The big names like Mary Black, Hannah Bardell, Alan Smith, Out for Indy, Kirsty Blackman. They're all very anti Joanna Cherry, and a lot of people just stay silent. So I can't honestly think of anybody that's backed her up.
No. That's a question that Denise Findlay asked on Twitter. Denise presents SheCauldron. And her tweet is here, has a single SNP MP or MSP said a word of support for Joanna Cherry? Are they all unprincipled cowards? It's a remarkable situation. Bruce, you've been following that?
Yeah, a while bit. The transgender issue, I think I didn't get wrapped up in it, to be honest, because I don't know anybody that's against transgender rights in any shape or form within the Yes movement. But I know everybody that wants to see women and girls getting treated fairly in their safe spaces to be protected. I find the whole debate it's a bit awful. So I try not to get too wrapped up in it. But what's happening to Joanna Cherry is just ridiculous. Yeah. Why would you treat someone in your own party, and someone who's so effective and high profile, and probably the most successful Westminster SNP MP, and you treat them like that? That's just, you wouldn't want to be in that party.
No.
But it's not just sacking her from the front bench. It was the death threats. It was the people that that trolled her online. They're, I think, still working for the party. They're still working for, I presume, other MPs at Westminster, and they've not been disciplined. Nothing's happened. No. And I find that incredible as well.
I was just going to say, you think Craig Murray is still in prison, and yet the guy who threatened Joanna Cherry with some of the most disgusting things that you could ever write online to a woman, he's not in prison, and yet Craig Murray's in prison for telling the truth.
There's very much a double standard going on, and I mean, with the things that's gone on, like the Marion Miller case. I mean, I don't know exactly what she's supposed to have tweeted. I know some of it, but you feel like you have to stay out of it because you're afraid of what can get you caught. They seem to be going for one side and not the other.
Yeah.
You get police at your door. You get, there's a girl in Northern Ireland that's got, she's having to deal with the police service in Northern Ireland now for things she's tweeted. Again, I don't know what she's done. But you get these pictures online of men with guns, men with knives, men with making death threats, and, turf should die and all this business, and nothing happens. And it is a double standard.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Right. Bruce, going to move on to another story here this week. John Major wrote, Sleaze is unacceptable. Now, the current government is facing a tsunami of corruption, the biggest since 1997. Is history repeating itself?
Yeah,
perhaps
definitely.
On an even larger scale?
I don't know if it's on an even larger scale. I personally think that I got interested in politics in my teenage years in the 80s, the mid-80s. And it seems like the Tories have always been involved in some sort of controversy every decade and every time they're in office that enriches themselves. And as they make the laws, then it's all fine. They don't get held to account because they create the laws. So, and if they break a law, they'll just go and change it. So the next lot of Tories can come in and they've got a wee bit more protection. I just think this Tory government are absolutely disgusting. So the COVID contracts to the recent Sleaze for the lobbyists, it's just, and people vote for them and we put up with it. And it's just beyond me when they're cutting universal credit and they've watered down the whole kind of legislation about second jobs and what their roles, what MPs' roles can be. It's like you can't even make it up, and yet people in this country sit by and we put up with it day in and day out. We live in a banana republic. Yeah. Every time the Tories are in power, we live in a banana republic. It's just disgusting. Absolutely disgusting me. And the biggest thing for me is sorry?
Julia?
No, carry on.
I was just going to say the biggest two things for me is we badly need independence to actually get away from this cesspit and poverty. The levels of poverty in this country with governments that have got, it feels like a deliberate policy of unemployment to keep wages down. It's just disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting in this day and age. I despise the Conservative Party and any politician that doesn't fight against that kind of stuff or supports it.
Julia?
Poverty, though, they want to keep up. They want poverty, though. The Tories want poverty. I think really many of the establishment parties want poverty because it keeps people in line. It keeps you frightened. You've got to keep whatever job you've got because for fear that you'll have nothing. And I mean, a lot of this, I mean, it depends. You can get into all sorts of economics then and say whether this stuff is needed. We've got enough money in the West. We've got, as a lot of people have said, it's not real money. They don't need to get taxes in before they spend them. But that's the mantra now is we can't spend money we haven't got, but governments can spend whatever they want. And it's a political choice to keep people poor. And it's a political choice to keep people, having to work 0 hours contracts, all the rest of it. Sadly, it doesn't seem as if the government at Holyrood seems much more interested in the poor than the Westminster government is. Levels of poverty in Scotland are the same as they were 20 odd years ago. It doesn't matter to people in the poorest areas of the cities what the gender wars are, what independence is about, because they're struggling day to day. And that should have changed by now. Whichever kind of government we had, it should have changed by now.
Totally agree. But I'm a community worker. That's what I do. And I see it every day with the young people that I work with. And it's heartbreaking. Because I grew up in poverty in the 80s. My parents experienced long periods of unemployment. So I remember what it's like to be a bit cold and a wee bit hungry. But it amazes me as well that my parents actually kept food on the table, to be perfectly honest, at some points in the 80s. But to be sitting at my age now, coming up for 53, and I'm seeing young people in exactly the same position I was in when I was 14, it's scary that we've not moved forward. Yeah. We've just not moved forward at all.
Yeah. And as well, another thing I think about is, like, when you're talking about Westminster Sleaze, there's also, I wouldn't call it Sleaze, but this question of second jobs is something that's rearing its head with the Scottish government now. MSPs have second jobs, should they? Yeah. Isn't that a big enough gig for them to be looking after the country? Why do they need a second job?
I don't have a huge issue with the second jobs thing as long as it fits in with what they've been elected to do. And it doesn't, their constituents are happy with it, it represents their constituents. I don't have a huge, massive issue with it. But it has to be constituents first, definitely. And it shouldn't be for personal enrichment to the extent of what some of the Tories have been up to. Yeah. Definitely.
Julia, can I move over to you and ask, are we legitimising Westminster corruption and its politics, even its foreign policy, by Scottish MPs remaining there? I'm thinking particularly of the SNP, who are the bulk of them. Has the time come to withdraw representation? Pete Wishart seems to think that his job is to reform Westminster. But really, he wasn't sent there to reform Westminster. He was sent there to pack up and leave.
That's it, yeah. I mean, I looked at the Gibraltar trip the other week. That was one of the things I did in my vlog.
Yes.
David Linden and Drew Hendry. I don't have a problem, Scots have served in the armed forces, with distinction. I mean, the other side of that is that quite often there was nothing else for them but to go into the forces, to have any kind of career. So it's kind of double-edged. But I mean, I'm not knocking people that have served in the armed forces. It's just that they seemed very comfortable. In that picture that was put in the paper, they seemed very comfortable. And I think the Westminster MPs, the SNP MPs seem quite comfortable, most of them. I mean, I remember I went to a church meeting once, slightly digressing, where Pete Wishart spoke, and he was trying to dream up his title when he went into the Lords. He was dreaming up, he was going to call himself Lord Rockingham. And he didn't understand why nobody thought this was funny, because we were sitting there thinking, why are you talking about the House of Lords? You're supposed to be not there at all. And I think, he epitomised a lot of them, that they are just there. I don't know why they're there. Yeah, we can't fix a system like Westminster where we're in the minority. And why would we do it anyway? We're not there to save England from itself. They're there to represent Scotland. They should be withdrawing, really, I think. Yeah, I do.
They get sucked in, don't they? They're in the top 3% of salary earners. They get all their expenses paid to live in London, which is the capital of the UK. They get to the restaurants and they get to meet famous people, and they have all their staff following them along corridors and picking them up when they fall down. And it's just, they lose sight, I think, of the real world and why they were there in the first place.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was what Maggie Thatcher was always of the opinion, that if there was a majority of SNP MPs, that would be a mandate for independence. It wouldn't be, well, you've still got to stay and ask us permission. It would be, okay, you voted for it, you can go. And that they seem to have forgotten that.
Yeah. We'll touch on that a wee bit later with the Scottish Sovereignty Research Group, actually. But Bruce, going back to you, Neil Hanvey wrote, or tweeted this just a few days ago, thanking Evans for the mire she created, appointing Murray foot of the vow, Sir Nicholas, now Lord Macpherson, the unimpartial head of UK Treasury, and now John Paul Marks from DWP. Is the Scottish Government morphing into a British State Tribute Act?
Yeah, it's starting to look like that. It looks like Westminster bureaucracy is getting its place people in before the next referendum. Sadly, if it has to be a referendum, I don't know if we should even bother with one, but we should just bypass that and just go. Yeah. But yeah, they're definitely doing that. And the latest edition, I mean, he was one of the main people behind Universal Credit. And for Nicola Sturgeon to stand up and say, oh, welcome, I'm looking forward to working with this guy, and he's so professional, he's been great at his job. You're thinking, really? This is one of the architects of Universal Credit that's created more misery in the last 5 years than's been created in the benefit system in the last 50 years. And you're welcoming this guy with open arms and saying you're looking forward to working with him. Guy gets a bonus for creating misery. An 89,000 bonus to his pension for creating misery. It's absolute. It beggars belief for me now how far Nicola Sturgeon will go. She's a devolutionist, or she's maybe even a unionist, to be honest, because she's done nothing in the last 6 years about independence. She's created policy that makes Scotland slowly but surely get worse every single day. Police Scotland's never really been that great. Educational attainment's fallen. The NHS is pretty much on its knees in Scotland. She's handled the pandemic as bad as Boris Johnson, if not worse in some areas, but she's been able to present it a bit better. So she can present a failure well, and she can hide her unionism pretty well. But when you look at it and you start to just learn a little bit, and I'm not a journalist or anything, I'm just a blogger. We spend a bit of time blogging. It's just, you just can't believe it. And you think, why do people worship this person? And then they're not questioning why the media not going for her record. It's just, you have to wonder what's going on. Is she in the pocket of the unionists? Is she a plant? Why does she get such a soft touch? Yeah. And this appointment, I just found when I read up on it, and I tried to read a bit more about this guy's history, I just thought, if I was a politician in Scotland, I'd be going mental at that. I wouldn't want this guy any place near the Scottish government, irrespective of whether he's a so-called impartial civil servant. I wouldn't want him anywhere near Scottish policy making and stuff like that. It's just, it's frightening what we're becoming under the SNP government and under Nicola Sturgeon. Absolutely frightening.
Yeah. Oh, Julia disappeared.
Yeah, an internet problem.
Yeah, she'll be back. Bruce, maybe I can just come over to you again then. There was the question I was going to put to Julia here about ISP and Alba. They're preparing for next year's local elections.
Yeah.
Now, there is a distinct possibility that there could be a snap British general election. There's a lot of stuff going on in the Conservative Party. The sense is that they've had enough of Boris. He's outlived his usefulness.
Yeah.
If there is a GE election, should Alba and the ISP, in your opinion, stand pro-Indy candidates to challenge an SNP which is clearly lukewarm on independence?
Definitely. The only thing I would like to probably see would be if ISP and Alba, I know some people pronounce it differently, don't stand against each other. So if it was a way for the two parties to sit down and say, right, let's look at our strengths, the areas where we've got good activist base, things like that, and agree that one person's one candidate in Dundee West, one in Dundee East, things like that, just so we maximise the two independence parties. That would be my preference. Whether they'll do that or not, I don't know. But I'd like to think that both parties are mature enough to at least have that discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, I've joined Alba. I'm not active yet. I hope to get active as I get more time. But I'd like to see both parties sit down and have that discussion personally.
Yeah.
Personally, definitely. But they should stand in every seat if they can. If the resources are there and the candidates are there, then they should stand in every seat.
Now, the feedback to that would be, or the criticism of that would be, that we risk losing all pro-independence representation at Westminster. But the alternative is perhaps another 5 years of very, very comfortable SNP MPs who appear not to be, as you've all mentioned, not to be totally interested in promoting independence at all.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, it's one of these situations where we may have to take a step back to take two forward. The SNP have morphed into what Scottish Labour become. Yeah. So, but they're not quite that as far down the road, maybe. Because I know some SNP members who are really decent, honest people who want independence as badly as everybody else. So maybe a warning shot has to be fired across the bows at the SNP to just let them say, don't take these votes for granted. You know?
Indeed.
And
welcome back, Julia.
A
little fright might be the thing.
Yeah. But I do hope that ISP and Alba can sit down and have a discussion about maximising our potential for success. So let's not compete against each other. Let's sit down, look at the activist base, look at where we're strong, and hopefully reach an agreement where which party will put a candidate in which seat. But let's agree to sit in every single seat between the two parties. But let's have that discussion. I wouldn't accept it being gerrymandering or anything like that, because I think the two parties, we need to think strategically to maximise the independent vote.
Yeah.
And if that impacts on the SNP and sends a warning shot across their bows about where the direction of travel that they're heading in, and the state they've allowed a once really excellent party to get into, then I'm all for it.
Yeah. Welcome back, Julia. I just put the next question, which I had lined up. Oh, we need your microphone. Julia, you need to unmute your microphone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, you're back. Welcome back. Welcome back. A network glitch. You've come back sharper and clearer than you were.
Yeah, well, we come in. We're in the middle of the country here, so we're blaming it on that. The internet gives out now and again. So.
Yeah, I have the same issues. I'm quite rural out here. All the crews are doing the road. Julia, I just put the question to Bruce, the one I had actually lined up for you. ISP Alba are preparing for next year's local elections, but if a snap general election is called, which is really quite possible, should ISP and the SNP stand candidates to challenge SNP candidates? Because the SNP clearly have lost sight of their core policy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the party would think about doing a deal with Alba. I suppose we would, in the sense that it would be better if we did arrange that one of us would stand everywhere. I don't know. But yeah, I certainly do that. I don't think if the SNP is there and we are not, Alba or ISP, then there's no independence party standing. So it's just going to be more of the same. I think they've settled down to being Digo Max. And I don't know what the game plan is, really. I don't know if they've got a game plan, whether they're just there for the money and the pension. I don't know. But they're not there to promote independence, I don't think. So, yeah, I think it would shake it up at the very least. If we could get some more elected, that would be good to add, hopefully, to Kenny McCaskill and Neil Hanby and start stirring it up.
Okay, but you've no news from no pointers from inside ISP that could be a policy, because a general election is not really that far off, and one could be called quite suddenly by the Tories.
I don't know if. Yeah, I don't know if they've got any, if they've had any thoughts about that. I think we are thinking about standing, but I don't know whether there's any kind of thinking about deals or anything like that. So I wouldn't be able to speak on behalf of the party on that one. But yeah, I suppose anything's possible. And I mean, even if it goes to what they're thinking it might do now to 23, that's not really that far away either. Considering we're almost in 22 now. So it is something we have to be focused on.
The Tories are definitely going early, because Boris Johnson's becoming a bigger liability on a daily basis now, and they're not even into their policy agenda. So they have got to go early as soon as they identify the candidate they want. I was listening to a podcast last week, an English podcast, and they were kind of hinting that it's not going to be somebody like Gove. So there's a little bit of time for Johnson just now, because they've not quite got their candidate yet. But all indications are he's on the way out. He's definitely on the way out. So there'll be a general election, May 23 maybe.
Yeah.
Which will please Nicola Sturgeon no end, because it'll save her from her whole fake referendum year.
It'll derail the referendum yet again. Yes.
Westminster might actually consult with Nicola Sturgeon on the date. So I'm just going to say Westminster might consult with Nicola Sturgeon on the date.
Sorry, Bruce, and then Julia. Bruce, could you just repeat the last?
Yeah, just saying. I was just trying to be a bit silly, but I was just saying Westminster might consult with Nicola Sturgeon on the date of the 23 election, because it's definitely looking like there's going to be one, and that'll get Nicola Sturgeon off the hook as far as a referendum pledge goes.
Yeah. Julia, you were saying?
Well, I think there will be something that derails it, because I mean, since 2017, she's gone really quiet on independence. It's always been 6 months down the road. There's always been something in the way. There was Brexit. There was let's see how Brexit works out. Then it's let's see what deal we get, and then there's an election, and then there's always something. It's always 6 months down the road. So she'll have something up her sleeve, no doubt. But,
she chooses her words very, very carefully when she said that referendum can't happen until we've come through the effects of the pandemic, and we've started to recover from the pandemic. Yeah. We will never recover from this pandemic. The families who have lost people because of poor policy and poor decision making, they'll never recover from this pandemic. No. So she chooses her words very, very carefully.
And I mean, the death toll, I don't know why the death toll has been so much worse in Britain. It's something I think about a lot. I think partly to do with underfunding the NHS, but Nicola Sturgeon sort of prided herself on we were so much better in Scotland, but we're actually not that much better in terms of numbers of victims or outcomes. We're a bit better on the precautions that we're putting in place now, like the masks and whatever. We've not gone down the free for all that England has, but then so has Wales and so has Northern Ireland. Really have done better. So I don't know. She was staking her reputation on COVID for a while, and I don't think she can anymore. So.
No. Maybe she wants to become queen of the environment. Maybe that's the next subject topic she can associate herself with. I mean,
save the world,
talking about
not
the death.
England.
Sorry.
Save the world.
Yeah. No, you were talking about the death toll in Scotland, Julia. Over here, just 500 kilometres to the east, Denmark has only had a fifth of the fatalities that Scotland has had. And the lockdown was just 1 week earlier, 10 days earlier than Scotland. And even the lockdown here was never as draconian as it was in Scotland. People were still going out, meeting in groups of 4 and 5. People weren't sort of imprisoned. So there should be some investigation into what has gone on there, because, as you said, the First Minister staked her reputation on that, and it's actually not as good as people believe it was at all.
Yeah.
I thought we were doing pretty badly early on. It was just the presentation and the daily briefings were kind of masking what was actually happening.
Yeah.
And again, the media gave. Sorry. The media gave the SNP government a really soft touch.
And I think they didn't do as much as she could have on things like she said, we can't close the borders, we can't impose quarantine on people coming abroad. Well, I think we could have on grounds of public health. There were measures that could have been done that she chose not to for some reason. She chose to stay in line with the UK. And
the Four Nations approach.
And now the Four Nations approach, going slightly off it, the Four Nations approach to the oil and to fossil fuels. She seems to be, first she was trying to save England from Brexit. She's now trying to manage the Four Nations resources. Why? But that's not her job. She's supposed to be getting us out of that, and she's not.
Yeah.
Can we move on, Bruce, Julia, to another point here? The Scottish Sovereignty Research Group has sent a letter to all MSPs and MPs about their plan to achieve independence. Is it time we go back to using the simple majority of MPs? Should we be using our marches, the AOB marches, to demand an end to the 1707 treaty?
Yep.
We just cannot keep marching for marching's sake. There must be, thinking back on the Velvet Revolution of 32 years ago, which came up in the news this week, some Czech tennis girls got very emotional about how their future was determined by people who took to the streets 32 years ago. They gave them a chance to live the lives they're now living, and they expressed gratitude for that. That should be Scottish young people in a few years' time.
Totally agree. I mean, I'm no expert on constitutional politics, but from an ordinary guy's point of view, if we are a country and not a colony, and we're a member of a voluntary union, then we should go into the next election and say to the Scottish voters, if you return a majority of independent supporting MPs to Westminster, they will immediately not take up their seats. They will come to Scotland, and we will inform Westminster we plan on pulling out of the Treaty of Union. There'll be a vote in Holyrood, revoke the treaty, and independence negotiations will start. So, because we're either a country in a voluntary union or we are not. It's one or the other. So we should just revoke the Treaty of Union, but it has to go to the Scottish people. I think it would have to be in all the mandates saying this is clear, and even have nothing else in the mandate. Have a one-page mandate that just says, if you elect me as your representative of Westminster, and there's a majority of independent supporting MPs, then we won't take up our seats, and we will go to Holyrood, have a convention, revoke the Treaty of Union, and we'll crack on. And it'd be democratic. There wouldn't be any way to say it's not democratic.
Not at all. Julia, have you been privy to any of discussions within ISP on the SSRG proposals?
No, I haven't. But I know when we were going to stand in May, we were doing it on the basis of it being a plebiscite election. So it's something we support. I mean, there's a lot of people that say the Treaty of Union's been breached anyway on numerous occasions. The fact that the Scottish legal system has been superseded by the Supreme Court, even by the House of Lords, that shouldn't happen theoretically under the Treaty of Union. the Internal Market Act is probably a breach of the Treaty of Union as well, because it affects Scotland's trade. There's enough times it's been breached that it possibly, it shouldn't even be effective anymore. I mean, yeah, I think we should go for ending the Treaty of Union. Yeah. And this business of always going cap in hand for a Section 30 doesn't, that just makes Scotland look powerless.
Yeah.
They're validating what the UK government is saying, that Scotland's a colony and not a nation. And I mean, even Northern Ireland's got the right to a vote every 7 years if they want it. And for Scotland, then we have to prove that we want it. We want a vote, and we've got 60%, and we've got to be for 40 years running or whatever. There's ridiculous, conditions put in the way. So yeah, I think the UK government knows that the Scottish government's going to do nothing, and I think the more MPs and MSPs we've got there that will actually stir it up and say, well, actually we are doing this. Stop us. I think that would progress things, because we're going nowhere at the moment. So yeah. I think we should.
Yeah, something's got to give soon. We certainly cannot continue for another 10 years in a state of flux when the governance of the current SNP government is so poor, and services and local authorities are starved of cash. Services are getting run into the ground. We cannot just be in limbo. Something's got to give. The Scottish people need to make a decision one way or the other about independence. And we have to accept it, and that includes people like me, even if any sort of result went against my preference. But we cannot stay in limbo much longer when poverty is rising, services are failing, local councils are struggling. It's just, we can't live like that. We can't do it.
We might see Alba and ISP MP candidates standing on a plebiscite election next time round.
Yeah, that would be great. And both parties hopefully agreeing to work together.
Absolutely. That would be the direct route to independence, and the direct route back into Europe via EFTA and the EEA.
Yeah.
The possibilities are there. Listen, Bruce and Julia, time's gone. Before we close, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time out on your Sunday to chat about these issues. Can you just tell us where we can find you on Twitter, and tell us where we can find your blogs?
Okay. The blog Grumpy Scottish Man, it's WordPress, but it's just Grumpy Scottish Man. I'm having a look at my Twitter because I can never remember what it is. It's just at Bruce Hosie for Twitter. Grumpy Scottish Man blog at Bruce Hosie.
Great stuff. Julia, are you still online?
I think I'm. I don't know actually what my Twitter thing is. It's at Julia Pannell, but I don't know if there's a number. But certainly on the ISP website, I'm there through that.
So you're writing the weekly review regularly,
which I read every week.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Listen,
you're welcome. It's very well written.
Thank you both for coming on.
Thank you.
Hope we can chat again soon.
Hope so.
Okay. Thanks for having us on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.